I've never been as cold as I was that winter. Not before, not since. And I've lived 94 years. I've experienced a lot of cold, but nothing like that. Nothing like Belgium in 1944. We didn't know what was coming. Nobody told us. Or maybe they knew and didn't tell us. I don't know. But we were dug in near a little town. Can't even remember the name now. And it was December and the weather was turning. And we thought maybe the Germans wouldn't attack anymore that year. Thought maybe we'd settle in for a quiet winter. Just hold position. Stay warm if we could. Wait for spring. That's what we thought. Then the Germans came. Just came out of nowhere. The whole line was thin that winter. Very thin. We were spread out. Too spread out. Not enough men, not enough supplies, and the Germans came through and we didn't have the numbers to stop them. I remember the morning it happened. Early, real early. It's still dark. And you could hear not gunfire at first, just the sound of them moving. Lots of them. Engines, tanks, trucks, just this constant rumble. And then the artillery started, and everything went to hell. We were dug in a foxhole, 3 of us, me and another sergeant named Collins and a kid from Kansas. The kid was maybe 19, maybe younger. His name was Patterson, something like that. He was shaking before they even started firing, just shaking. Cold or scared or both. And I told him it would be okay. Told him we'd hold the line. Told him they wouldn't break through. I don't know if I believe that, but I said it anyway. The artillery came in hard. This was German artillery. Heavy artillery. You could hear it coming, that whistle. And you'd put your head down and you'd pray it landed somewhere else. And sometimes it did and sometimes it didn't. There was a foxhole maybe 30 feet from us. A shell hit it directly. Just, I don't know, it was just gone. The men in it were just gone. And we didn't have time to think about that. Didn't have time to process it. Just kept our heads down and waited. When the German infantry came, that's when it got personal. You could see them coming through the snow. Gray uniforms, gray everything, moving in waves. Just endless waves of them. And we had maybe 3 or 4 magazines of ammunition each, maybe more. I can't remember exactly, but it felt like not enough. We started firing and they started falling, but there were so many. For every one we hit, there were 5 more coming. The kid, Patterson, he froze when he saw them coming. He just froze. Couldn't move, couldn't shoot, just sat there shaking. And Collins was yelling at him to shoot, to get down, to do something. But the kid was gone, just checked out. So Collins had to cover his sector too. Had to fire both his rifle and the kid's. And I was trying to coordinate with the position to our right and keep our left flank from getting overrun. And it was chaos, absolute chaos. They didn't break through our section. I don't know why. Look, maybe. We killed enough of them that they pulled back, regrouped somewhere else. But I remember thinking, this is it. This is how it ends. We're going to get overrun. We're not going to make it. By the time the morning was over, we'd held. Barely, but we'd held. The cold was the thing that killed more people, though. The combat was intense but brief. The cold was constant, and it was relentless. And it was worse than the German bullets in some ways, because you could take cover from bullets. You couldn't take cover from cold like that. We were rotating men out of the line to try to warm up, trying to get them back to some kind of shelter, but there wasn't shelter. There was barely enough food. The supply lines were cut. The Germans had disrupted everything. We didn't have enough fuel, didn't have enough blankets, didn't have enough of anything. I remember the first night, it dropped below 0. way below zero. And we were in those foxholes, dug down 6 feet down, 8 feet down. And it doesn't matter. Cold like that, it finds you. And you can't get warm. You can't stop shaking. Your teeth chatter so hard you think they might break. We had maybe 2 blankets between the 3 of us. We'd rotate them. One guy would get the blankets for an hour, try to get some feeling back in his extremities, try to warm up. Then he'd give them to the next guy. And it never felt like enough. It never felt like you were getting warm, just maybe getting slightly less cold. The frostbite started within days. I remember looking at my feet, and they didn't look like feet anymore. They looked like somebody else's feet. White, blistered, wrong, and I couldn't feel them. That was the worst part. Not the pain, but the fact that you couldn't feel them, like they weren't part of your body anymore. And I kept thinking, I'm going to lose my feet. I'm going to lose my toes at minimum. And I tried to keep moving, tried to keep circulation. But it was so cold, so incredibly cold. There was a fellow next to us in another foxhole. We call him Dutch. He was from Nebraska, and he got trench foot bad, real bad. His feet turned black, literally black, and he couldn't walk anymore. Couldn't even stand. And we didn't have transport to get him out. So he just sat there, and eventually we had to leave him. When we pulled back, we had to leave Dutch. And I think about that sometimes. Think about leaving a man behind because we couldn't carry him, because he was too injured and we didn't have the resources. A lot of men got gangrene, infections that turned gangrenous. And the doctors, and I say this with respect for what they were trying to do, they were overwhelmed. They didn't have the supplies to treat it, didn't have the medicine. So men died from infection, died from something that should have been treatable, died because the cold damaged their feet so badly that they couldn't recover. By about the second week, the reality set in. We weren't going anywhere. The Germans had pushed us back hard, but they hadn't broken through. And now we were going to have to hold against their continued assaults. And we were going to have to do it in this brutal cold, in these conditions, with limited supplies, with men who were getting colder and more injured every day. There was no word about when it would warm up, no word about relief, no word about when we could go to the rear and regroup. It was just hold the line, keep holding, don't let them break through. That's all it was. I remember a sergeant coming through one day, a higher ranking sergeant, checking positions, and I told him we were in bad shape. Told him men had frostbite. Told him we didn't have enough supplies. Told him we needed relief. And he just looked at me and said, everybody's in bad shape, Sergeant. You hold what you got. That was it. No sympathy, no help, just hold. So we held. The nights were the worst. During the day, you could stay busy, could do things, maintain equipment, check the perimeter, keep your mind occupied. But at night, when it was just dark and cold and you were stuck in that hole, that's when you started losing it. That's when the cold got inside your head, started doing things to your thinking, making you paranoid, making you see things, making you question whether you'd ever be warm again. I kept imagining warm places. Would sit there in that foxhole and I'd imagine fire, a real fire with heat, and I'd think about my mother's kitchen, how warm it always was, how she always had the stove going. And I'd try to remember what warmth felt like. Actually felt like on your skin. And I couldn't quite remember, couldn't quite make it real in my head, which terrified me. Terrified me that I'd been cold so long I was forgetting what warmth was. There was a replacement that came in. Young kid, really young, maybe 18, from somewhere down south, I think. And he wasn't prepared for that cold. Nobody was really but he especially wasn't. Kept talking about missing his mother, missing his home, crying sometimes. And I felt bad for him, but there was nothing I could do. I just had to tell him to toughen up to survive, which sounds harsh, but it was the reality. You had to toughen up or you died. He died anyway, got pneumonia or something, got sick, and there wasn't medical care close enough, wasn't care good enough. And he died in a trench in Belgium in the middle of winter. Never got to go home, never got to be warm again. The German attacks kept coming, not as organized as the first one, but persistent. They'd probe the line. We'd push them back. They'd probe again. It was exhausting. Exhausting in a way that cold amplifies, because you're not just fighting. You're fighting and trying not to freeze to death. You're fighting and managing injuries. You're fighting and trying to keep other men alive. I remember one night there was a small assault, maybe 30 or 40 Germans trying to take a specific position. And we held them off, killed most of them. The rest retreated. And as they were pulling back, one of them was wounded, lying out in the snow between the lines, calling out, asking for help. And I could hear him, could hear his voice. And he was cold and he was dying and he was scared. And I wanted to go get him, wanted to end his suffering. But I couldn't, because if I left the foxhole, I'd expose our position and the other men would die. So I didn't go, and I listened to him for a while. And then he stopped calling, and I knew he was dead. And I still don't know if that was the right decision. Still don't know if I should have gone. The interesting thing about extreme cold is it changes time. Minutes feel like hours. Hours feel like days. Days feel like months. It'd been about 3 weeks and it felt like 3 months. I couldn't remember what it was like before. Couldn't remember anywhere that wasn't cold. Couldn't imagine a future where I wasn't in this foxhole. Couldn't imagine spring. Couldn't imagine warmth. Couldn't imagine anything except the next hour. Just making it through the next hour. We ran out of water at one point. That sounds weird when you're surrounded by snow. But you can't drink snow. Burns your mouth. Burns your throat. You have to melt it. And we didn't have fuel to melt it. So we were thirsty in addition to being cold and hungry and terrified and just thirsty. Which shouldn't have been the worst thing, but it was. It was one more thing. One more way the cold was winning. By about the 4th week, men were getting evacuated. The ones with the worst frostbite, the ones who were sick, the ones who were just breaking, and we'd send them back when we could. But there was never enough transport, never enough space. So most of us had to stay. I remember one of the men in our section, good soldier, good man. And he just stopped talking one day, just went silent. Didn't respond when you talked to him, didn't react to anything, just sat there. And we knew what it was. Combat exhaustion. That's what they called it then. Now they'd call it something else. But it was a man's mind breaking under the strain. And there was nothing we could do. Just had to keep him in the line and hope he didn't do anything that would get people killed. He didn't. He just sat there, silent. The cold was winning. That's what it felt like. That the cold was an enemy that we couldn't defeat. That no matter what we did, no matter how we fought, the cold was going to get us. It was going to get us all. I lost 3 toes to frostbite. Took them months to decide whether they could save the others. Months of pain and amputation and trying to figure out if I could still walk. But I lived. A lot of men didn't. A lot of men died from the cold, from infections they got from the cold, from giving up, from the weight of it all becoming too much. When the weather finally broke, it was like waking up. It took about 2 weeks, but gradually the temperature rose. Gradually you could feel your fingers and toes again. Gradually your mind started working again. Gradually, you remembered what it felt like to not be freezing. And even though they were still fighting, even though the war wasn't over, it felt like we'd won something, like we'd survived the worst thing the world could throw at us. And we were still here. I think about that winter a lot. Think about the men who died from the cold. Think about the ones who got badly frostbitten. Think about the ones who just gave up. And I think about how brutal it was, how unnecessarily brutal. We weren't prepared for that. Nobody was. The Army didn't think we'd need cold weather gear, didn't think about supplies being cut off, didn't think about the Germans attacking when everybody expected peace. It was a perfect storm of unpreparedness and bad luck and human cruelty. And we had to survive it, just survive it, and hope that somebody somewhere was planning to get us out. That winter took something from all of us, even the ones who didn't get frostbite, even the ones who didn't get sick. It changed how we saw things, changed our capacity for suffering, changed what we thought we could endure. I've been cold since in regular winters, and it never bothers me much because I remember what real cold is. And nothing compares, nothing ever will. But I'm grateful I made it through. Grateful I survived. Grateful that the war ended before another winter like that could happen. Because I don't know if I could have survived another one. Don't know if any of us could have. God bless the men who died that winter. God bless the ones who survived with injuries. God bless the ones who just barely made it through psychologically. That winter in Belgium was the hardest thing I ever experienced. Harder than the combat, harder than anything. The cold is something I never forgot, never will forget. As long as I live, I'll remember that cold. I'll remember what it took to survive it. And I'll be grateful for every warm day I get, because I know what it's like when the cold wins, when it really wins. And I know how lucky I was to escape it.